Hey, Joe Gilder here. Welcome back to Mix Together. As we begin, very close to beginning our final descent and landing this mix, there's one other kind of backdoor thing I want to do. Whoa, what just happened? To make this fake room track that we created in the last episode a little easier to work with. So you saw me go in and edit automation points to turn volume up and down. It's just clunky. And it's not so much a Studio One thing as it is just a me thing. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this whole track. I'm going to hit the bounce button to just bounce it all as one single. Okay, rendered it all to just one audio file. And now what I'm going to do is actually transform all of this to a single file with all the rendered effects. So, because if I come in here and I do what I like to do, which is to chop it up and use keyboard shortcuts to turn the audio up and down, that doesn't work super well because that's changing the amount of signal feeding into the distortion that we have set up, which that needs to stay pretty standard. But what I noticed was in sections like this with that big open hi-hat sound that the drummer's playing, it's just too loud. It needs to be turned down in those different sections, and I need to just have greater control over that. And I don't want to be in here moving automation points and trying to, clunkily move my way through that. So instead, what I'm going to do is transform this audio, render it down, essentially. There's lots of ways to do that. One way that I actually didn't know Studio One did, it has a transform to rendered audio function that just takes a track and literally transforms the track. So instead of printing this or recording this to another track, it'll actually bounce it down and essentially replace the track with what we had. I don't know if there's a way to get back to the original track. I think there is. And you can see up here, clipping has occurred. I don't care. It's a clipped track. So if there's a little bit of clipping, I'm going to be okay with that. But now we'll have a piece of audio that we can then chop up. It'll have the effects baked in, and then we can chop it up louder and softer in real time without having to use all the automation lanes. And that's just a personal preference thing. If I can get through a mix without doing actual volume automation, I'm a happy camper because that kind of stuff just drives me nuts. So now we have this. So that is now a track with 0 plugins on it because we rendered it, we transformed it. And I just out of curiosity transformed to real-time audio. Okay, that would transfer it back, I think, to having the plugins. Good to know. So now we can go through and take the different sections and make it work. So real quickly, let me just... So this is the verse. So essentially, I just want to transform it from like here to here and just bring it down a few dB. But before I do that, let me just, I'll keep that. Let me just turn the overall volume down. I think it probably rendered it a little hotter than it was before. Let me go listen.
You're not alone. We all experience the same. Let me help you. Help deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn to rise again. You're not alone.
Cool. I like that. So this piece of audio is turned down how much? About 6 dB down. So that should be good. So now I'm just going to go through and make sure I've got each section kind of at the volume it needs to be. Yeah, when that comes in, it just brings in a little more of that roomy, distorted, just gross sound, which I love. And let's find the other spots where it needs to chill out a little bit. It's when these guitars go away. Back over here. So I want to make sure, I know sometimes I'll go through this stuff and I'm probably not making it as clear as I'd like to make it. Listen to, this is that fake room, crazy distorted thing in the mix, but not turned down yet. So it sounds great here. If we turn it off, adds a lot of life, a lot of just crazy, just intensity. But then we get to this section and it gets a little too much.
How can this be true? How could people find?
You hear how that kind of reverb sound on the hi-hat and the snare drum here? It's too much.
How can this be true?
It's too much. So
How can
we'll just come in here and we'll take that downbeat right there. And we're going to cut that and we'll go basically where it starts getting huge again. Right there. Ba-na-na-na. And we'll take this one and we'll just drop it down a few dB. So Studio One has an option. I can just hit the minus sign on my keyboard and it drops it 3 dB. So I'm going to do that twice. I think that's what we did over here on this one. Let's see, I think that one is also, yeah. If we look down here, it tells me that one's dropped 6 dB. So we dropped it 6 dB here and 6 dB here. That should, let's always listen and make sure.
you're not the only one? You're not alone. We all experience the same. You're not the only one. You're
Totally did the wrong section. What happened?
day after day. How can this be true? How could people have thought this through? Sounds like utter bull. I'll jump in the first clear thought. I'm so
I actually think it could be a little quieter. So I'm going to select both of these and take them down another 3 dB.
in the first clear thought. I'm suicidal. Lost at all. You're not the only one. The harder I fall.
Yeah, I like the way that hits when it comes in. Let's see. The rest of the song, I think we're good.
Help me deal with this pain. You're not.
This is that section with the open hi-hat. I will bring that one down some.
You're not the you're you're not alone.
Here for the guitar solo, it's doing that same psh, psh thing again.
You're not alone.
So right here, we'll bring that down. Let's find where it stops. Yeah, right where that kind of harmony guitar comes in is where the drums go back to what they were doing. So I'll take these two and bring them in. Just that one section.
You're not alone. You're not alone. We all experience the same. We all.
Did you hear that? Okay, this is crazy. Listen to the drums over the entire mix. You'll hear this come out when he plays the ride cymbal. Listen. You hear that? That's so funny. That's coming out of this track. I'm going to EQ that one little frequency out because it just bothered me. And I know I would hear it on earbuds.
We all experience experience the same.
Sounds like a bell at a train station. Autobahn.
We all experience the same.
Little stuff like that, just so fun. So I take the EQ off, put it on. You still hear the ting ting, but you don't hear the ringing out like crazy. Okay, let's finish out. Make sure we've done everything we need to do on this fake room.
We all experience the same. Let me help you. Help deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn to rise again. You're not alone. We will claim our own terrain. You're not the only one. You're not the only one.
Notice that at the end of the last one, this track has all the reverb. All that sound needs to not be there in this track. That sounds silly. So just let that naturally fade out to about right here. That's not terribly natural, is it? I just wanted it to fade out before that drop it stick sound comes in. That drop stick sound is cool, it sounds real, but having it in the reverb sounded funny. Okay, that's cool. Love it, love it, love it.
The only one.
Now I want to give one listen just overall tone-wise and make sure I don't feel like it's too bright or not enough mid-range overall, and make some adjustments on the mix bus. And then I'm going to kind of begin the process that I like to do when I mix these or when I'm getting close to the end. So let's do that. Let's pull up our mix bus processing here, and let's just listen for a second.
We all experience the same. Let me help you. Help deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn to rise again. You're not alone. We will claim our own terrain. You're not the only one. You're not. We all experience the same. Let me help.
Cool. I think that helped. That's a little, we're dipping our toe into maybe what would be considered mastering. But I just took two frequencies, boosted one 6.64 dB and another cut by just 1 dB. The boost is at 360, which is interesting because we cut a lot of 360 in drums and some of the guitars and things like that. But overall, that's a good frequency for warmth without getting muddiness. So I found on mixes, sometimes I can jack this thing up and get some warmth out of it. And then 4.8K is a lot of the brightness of the guitars and the vocal. Felt like it was a little bit much, just a little bit, so I brought it down, and it seemed to make a difference. I'll play it again, and you'll see me click this on and off. We'll start with it off, and when I click it on, listen to just a little bit how smoother and warmer the mix sounds. And it's just two little tiny EQ moves.
We all experience the same. Let me help you. Help deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our worst, but we learn.
It's funny, it feels like it makes the kick drum come a little more forward and pushes the vocal and guitars back ever so slightly. You got to listen on like 1080 HD in YouTube to really hear that, I'm guessing. And I will admit that it is pretty subtle. But that's pretty cool. I'm getting so this is a really hot mix. A lot of the compression and stuff that I've added has made it pretty loud, so I'm pretty sure I'm clipping my main output occasionally. So I'm going to turn down any makeup gain I've got on the compressor. Fun thing real quick, let's go back to our static mix. Remember when we very first mixed the song, we recorded down our static mix, which we have here. Let's take a listen to that. That was before we added any plugins, so it's kind of fun to switch back and forth and see how far we've come. Great song. Okay, so I'm ready to do the thing that I do. So if you have checked out my, let me rename this real quick. If you've checked out my 5-step mix guide at 5stepmix.com, if you want to check that out, that's free as well. I'll walk you through my process for mixing. It's kind of an overview, big picture view of how I like to process stuff. So I'm just creating a new layer here. We'll call this mix 1. And in that PDF, I talk about one of the things is my process for how to know when the mix is finished, and that's what I'm going to show you now. It's not magical. It's not any sort of trick. It's just a very borderline nerdy approach to getting the mix done. Because for a lot of people, and myself included, we can have a hard time actually finishing things. We can get to this point, and we've been at this for a few hours. And then we could spend another 3 or 4 hours tweaking away and arguably messing up the mix more than helping it because we don't have any sort of standard to know when we're finished. It would be nice if you knew, kind of without a doubt, this mix is finished. You know the old saying, mixes aren't finished, they're only abandoned. I guess that's somewhat true, but if you use this process, you can feel more confident about it being finished, and it gives you a few chances to catch things that you may not catch otherwise. And the basic premise is this. You listen down to your mix in its entirety from start to finish, and you take notes of what you want to change. Rather than stopping and changing them, you listen to the entire mix and you update your notes as you listen. For example, the biggest mistake you can make is let's say we hadn't automated this fake room track that we created, okay? So this thing right here. And so we start the song, we say, we're listening, we say, oh, it's too loud, so we turn it down. But then the chorus comes in and we realize, oh, we can't hear it, and we turn it back up. Well, guess what? It's still too loud in the verses. Doing this, listening to the song as a whole, allows us to say, fake room is too loud in the verses. And we don't touch anything. We don't change anything. We just continue to listen. We get to the choruses, and we make a note of, it says here I said it was too loud in the verses. It's actually just right in the choruses. That lets me know I need to just turn it down in the verses, not also in the choruses. That's where we start chasing our own tails when we mix. We'll make a change in one section of the song, and it will break that track in another section. And then we'll hear the broken track in the other section, and we'll fix it there, and then that goes and breaks what we had done in the first section. And we just keep going back and forth, messing with ourselves. So this allows you to hear it as a whole, and you may change your mind. At the beginning of the song, you may say bass is too loud. By the end, you say, no, I changed my mind. I actually like it there. I needed to hear it in context, whatever that may be. So the process is very simple. You can do an export, put it on your phone, and go listen elsewhere. Or you can listen right here in the studio. I like to do a combination of all these, but it essentially just involves listening to the mix and taking notes and making a to-do list. I like to do it on paper when at all possible. For this video, of course, I don't have a camera on right now, so I'm just going to do it in like a simple text file. And this studio computer can be so slow. And what I'll do is I'll just take notes. And these notes will essentially be a to-do list of things to do in the mix, and I'm only going to do these things. So you're not alone. I'll make this a big old font so we can all read it. And I'll just go through and make notes of things. And, maybe I'll make no notes. It'll be completely awesome. But I have a sneaky suspicion I'm going to have some things I want to change. So I'm going to call this the studio listen, because I like to listen in different environments. But for the studio listen, these will be my notes. So what I'm going to do while I'm listening is I'm actually going to print this, record this down to the track. and take notes. So that's what's happening now. I would encourage you to pause the video, get your phone out, notes app, some sort of text file, or pen and paper, which is my personal preference, and do this along with me. What things do you hear? Because this is subjective. You're going to hear things I'm not going to hear. I'm going to miss things. And you need to develop your own critical listening skills. And one way to do that is to listen down and make notes of things that you would change. Even if you're thinking, you're new to mixing, how could you may not even hear the things that I hear. Maybe you think I'm way ahead of you, which I'm really not. I'm just a normal dude who's mixed a lot, and you can be a normal dude or dudette who has mixed a lot as well. And you have things to offer as well. You can hear a good mix and a bad mix, and you can develop those skills, but it just requires sitting down and listening. So without me blabbering on anymore, let me hit record and let's listen to this thing. Cool. So, what notes did you get? How did your notes compare to mine? One of the great things about doing that, especially if you're doing it on paper, is you may even like shut your computer screen off entirely, or put on the screensaver, or just not like that. The way I did that, I couldn't really see the screen, which keeps me from taking any visual cues as to what notes I'm taking. I'm literally just listening with my ears, as if I was listening somewhere else. So now there's a couple things we can do. If you're feeling really good about it, this is where it's all of this is fairly up to you how you want to do it. If you're feeling really good about the mix, I say, let me flip it around. If you're not sure about the mix, you listen down and you realize, you know what, it does still need some work. And that's not just you being negative. You've got a lot of things here that just more obvious that need to be addressed that maybe you forgot to deal with. Then I would say stop right here and turn this into your to-do list and go do this. The key here is to do only the things on this list. Don't listen to anything else. Don't listen to any other sections than what you're working on. Then stop and do the process again. If you get to a point, and you can repeat this process as many times as you want. It may seem like you're wasting time sitting there twiddling your thumbs only listening, but remember, this is music. You're supposed to listen, and chances are, when you're this far into a mix, you've stopped listening somewhat to how the song sounds as a whole. This forces you to step back and do that. If you need to sit on your hands to keep you from grabbing that mouse and clicking on a parameter while you're doing the listen down, then do it. Have a large friend sit on you or something so that you just listen, okay? Although if someone's sitting on you, that's going to block some frequencies, so you got to deal with that. Now, if you are feeling good, so in this, where I am right now, I feel pretty good about this. Most of these things are more like suggestions of, hey, go check that. I'm not sure if I want to change it, but go check this and go listen to it. Give it one more critical listen, and make a decision on that. I don't feel like any of these are super problematic. The main thing, the intro, I haven't listened to a lot. Feels a little weak in spots. I could probably turn up the guitars. That's the only thing that felt more like definitely off. Everything else is a little more subjective. So what I would do, since I'm feeling confident about this, I'm going to listen on other systems and then compare notes. So I'm going to do, an earbud listen where I listen on my like Apple headphones on my phone. I might do maybe a car listen on my car stereo, or a Bose listen on like the Bose system in the living room, and do the same thing, take notes as I go. Now, if I'm listening in the car, I'm not writing the notes down, but I'm just taking a mental note of that really bothered me, that really bothered me. Earbuds are really great for hearing specifically higher frequency problems in the upper mid-range that maybe don't feel so bad in my studio, but they kind of chop my head off on earbuds. Those are the kind of things I need to address. And usually if I address them in the big mix, it doesn't really affect the sound of the mix on the big speakers, but it does make it sound better on the little earbuds. Now, you can certainly just plug your earbuds right into your headphone amp and do that here in the studio, but it's also nice to get a little bit of a change of scenery. At this point, if I've been sitting in this chair for 4 hours straight, it's nice to get up and go for a drive, go for a walk, take a break, and then listen on earbuds and kind of take a new set of notes, and then we can come back with fresh ears. That says eared bud. Wow. And we can do the tweaks. So I'm going to do that now. Now, the way that I like to do this, it changes a little bit here and there over the years, but I'll take this mix and I will export it. So there's an option to export selection. Let me find it real quick. I have a keyboard shortcut I set up for this. If you right-click on it, event, export selection, that's what it is. So I'm doing that. I'm just exporting it. There's no limiter on there, but this mix is actually really loud, so I don't really need the limiter. Calling it You're Not Alone Mix 1, and I'm just going to put it into a folder on Dropbox called Listen. So I've got this folder set up to automatically download to the Dropbox app on my phone. So as soon as this exports, it's in there. We can go look in that folder now. Right here, you can see it is, in a minute, it'll be uploaded to Dropbox. Then in a minute later, it'll be on my phone. By the time I get to my car, plug my headphones in, it should be there waiting for me to listen. Then I will listen and take some notes and come back and tell you what I got, and we'll go from there. Okay, sound good? All right. Okay, I'm back after a couple listens on earbuds, actually. Made a few additional notes, mainly right here. And I really recommend listening on headphones, either in your studio or somewhere else, just to hear what's happening with the panning and to hear some of the things you maybe won't hear on speakers, whether it's a clarity thing or just things come out differently on headphones. So make sure you're listening before you're calling the thing done. And actually, these are probably, to me, more interesting and more important than the stuff I had on the other list. So we're going to start here. So the 3 things I heard on headphones, there's a quick lyric thing in the second chorus where they're just not lined up. We fixed one of those before. I need to fix that. And then there's the panning thing on the intro guitars. That's weird, and where the one guitar's panned left, it needs to be up the middle, I think. And then the heavy part on the intro just doesn't hit very hard, which I said the intro feels weak up here as well. So that kind of, those seem to kind of go together. So first thing I'm going to do is this one, the lyric thing before the chorus. Let's deal with that. I'm sorry, before the guitar solo. Right there. Did you hear that? The double just wasn't quite consistent.
Time change. Time change. Time change.
Yeah, that one came in way early, so we'll just... that part almost looks like it comes in early all the time for this take. Look at that. No. Just this whole section. Look, this whole section is early. And then this part was real early. What if we do that?
Time changes. Time changes. Time changes.
It's gonna sound funny by itself, but it's such a background part. I'm not that worried about it.
Time changes as we face our own.
Okay. It's also these vocals here.
Time changes as we face our...
So I'm just, instead of trying to get those to line up, I'm just gonna delete and mute out the word time and just let changes be the thing. I think that'll be fine.
Time changes as we have to deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our own words, but we're not to rise again.
Maybe not this one.
Have to deal with this pain. Time changes as we face our own words, but we're not to rise again.
I think really it was these two, the main lead and the double, that are actually late. I think the other ones were on time, but they're together. That's all that really matters. Okay, so that part is done. Delete. Pan the intro guitars. So the very beginning of the song, we haven't spent much time there, which is understandable. Turn that one up. There's something else. What was the other thing I wanted to pan? It was like the lead. This one. So that comes in, and then here the second one comes in. What's that one doing? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I don't mind them being pan left and right once they're both playing, but this first one needs to be up the middle. So I'm going to move it right here, like this. So you got two acoustics on the left and right, electric guitar up the middle. Okay, I think that was it. That was just, it just literally felt funny with nothing up the middle for that little quieter section. And then make the heavy part hit harder. I feel like the build up, this is a pretty common problem you'll hear in mixes, where the build up hang on, these guitars need to be louder too. And then these guys. So that downbeat, the down, down, burn it down, 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 that should hit really hard, right? Let me mark that. Big. But it's just not. The build-up actually feels like it has more energy than the downbeat. Now, your initial gut instinct would be to, okay, let's just go turn up that section. And that makes sense, but I actually think there's a better solution, and that is this. Let's take everything prior to that section and turn it down. I think that's actually going to have a bigger impact than the other. There's a couple ways to do that. My initial thought was to come in here and just separate them and then select all of those audio files and just turn them down manually or turn them down altogether. That could work. I want to try actually something different. So Studio One and somewhat recently introduced VCA faders, which stands for Voltage Control Oscillator. The whole idea is you can take, which I'm going to get rid of this, hide that one. You can take a group of faders and have them controlled by a single fader. You're not routing the signal through that fader, you're just controlling them with that fader. And it's interesting, it's a slight difference to a bus. I'm going to try that with my main buses. So drums, bass, electric, acoustic, vocals. Actually, just for the instrumental tracks. So the instrumental buses, drums, bass, electrics, acoustics. So I'm going to add a VCA for selected channels. And that VCA shows up somewhere. Okay, it's way over here. So this is the VCA. So inst VCA. And what this does, if you look, I'll move it over here. When I move, it doesn't want to move over there, that's fine. When I move this fader, you'll notice all the instrument buses move, but they stay the same relative volume to one another. And when I put this back at 0, they're all at the same place. And I can automate this VCA fader as its own thing. So I'm kind of, instead of automating each of those buses to go up and down, which would be a pain, I can automate one VCA fader that will cause all of that to happen. So my plan here is to, if I want it to be big here, then I need to automate the VCA. So that big marker is in the right spot, right? It needs to go, bam, right there. So if I go find this VCA fader, which is here, and I just say, I want everything prior to this spot right here to be, I don't know, 2 dB quieter. Let's start with 2. So everything over here is down 2 dB, everything over here is up. As soon as it gets to that section, it jumps up 2 dB. Let's just see what happens. A couple of things I'm anticipating. One, we're turning down how much volume is hitting the mix bus compressor because we're turning down these faders before here, which is interesting. We could also do the same thing using a VCA to control all audio tracks to turn them down slightly, which would be kind of the same as going in and chopping up the audio and turning down the actual files themselves. That'll just change. That'll change the amount of audio going into each of the individual compressors as well, which we may end up doing, but I want to see if this works first. So let's back up a little bit and just see how this sounds. Does this sound any bigger going into the big section? It's not a huge difference. Let's go too far in the wrong direction so then we can come back and kind of ask for forgiveness. Let's drop it down 6 dB just to make sure it's doing something. Okay, that actually gives us some interesting information. It's turning up a little too late. It needs to turn up a little sooner. that kind of goes bam right on the downbeat. Let's turn it up, move it a little over. Okay, now what if it faded in? That's interesting. Okay, so let's go to like, here's 0 dB. Let's go 3 dB down with a little ramp up in volume. Okay, I like that difference in volume. I don't want quite that much ramp up. That felt a little funny. And let's bring it down another half a dB. So we got 3.5 dB of volume before the big boom. Man, I haven't done stuff like this in such a long time. It's kind of fun. All right, let's see how that's working. All right, to my ear, that feels cooler. Let's go back. I'm going to turn this off. We're going to listen to the previous mix down. Here's what that sounded like. Sorry, this is the mix down. So it gets more energy, but it actually loses some volume. You can actually see. Look at the waveform. It's a little thicker here. It goes down. The drums are doing different stuff, and we just lose some energy. So in the new version, so here's the old one again. And then here's the new one with the automation. Okay, that's one idea. Now, one thing I want to do, I'm going to turn this off for a second. And I'm going to try doing the same thing, but just with the drums instead of the VCA for all the instruments. Because the instruments don't seem like they needed to be as quiet, but it was the drums that were the loudest. So I'm going to go click on the drum fader, add an automation lane for drums. And I'm going to do this, essentially the same type of automation, but just on the drums. I turned off the automation on everything else. So let's just take 3 dB out here. Okay, first of all, I don't like some of those extra guitars. They're too loud now. These things. Okay, experimented with both. I think I'm going to go back to the original and not do the drum automation. The drums just felt too weak then. So delete that, bring the drums back up to 0 where they were, and then use this VCA automation to turn all the instruments down. And I think we can even get away with a slightly bigger jump. I know it's getting a little meticulous, but this kind of stuff's super fun. So 4.5 dB. That seems crazy to me. Let's just see. Split the difference. Let's go 4 dB. 4 instead of 4.5. Sometimes this stuff doesn't work at all, and then sometimes it's awesome. All right, so now we're at 4 dB down. All right, let's see how that sounds. That's how the end sounds. Go back to the intro. Might still be a little too big of a jump. Let's go back to 3.5. But I like it. I like the impact that's there. It's cool. Especially at louder volumes, it just hits you in the face. That is it, my friend. Oh, that's so much better. So listen to how, this is the before, this is the previous mix, how just everything's static, nothing automated volume-wise. It sounded fine. In fact, this section sounded too good. When it got to the big downbeat, it was like a letdown. So we had to turn, instead of turning up the big downbeat, we already had a pretty loud mix. I couldn't really spare any more volume there. Actually, the correct solution was to turn it down previous to give us a place to go. So here's the previous mix without the automation, then I'll go right back into the automation. Listen to how much bigger this impact is. Oh man, that feels good. I'm about to run out of time. I don't want it to make this last forever. But that's it. We got through our earbud to-do list. And that feels really good. We fixed this. We fixed this. And then everything else is having to do with verse and chorus and some harmony stuff. You're not alone. Notes. So that feels good. I'm going to leave this for the next video. We're going to come back, go through these things, do another listen, and see if there's anything else we need to do. Go through that process once or twice until we can say, hey, this mix is done. I'm super excited. I hope you are as well. If you have not been following along with me, that's completely fine. If you're wanting to get better at mixing, watching me mix something on YouTube is not going to do it. You have to combine that with doing the mix yourself. You never have to share it with anyone if you don't want to, but doing the mix, trying some of the things I show you, and then actually finishing the mix, which I think is the most important part, will absolutely make you better. And then just rinse and repeat and keep doing it over and over again. But you got to start. And I'm here to tell you, you've seen the stuff that I've done. I've done lots of embarrassing things and stuff that hasn't worked. It's fine. It's fine. This is music. We try things, we fail at things, we improvise, and then it doesn't work, and we go back and try something else. It's totally fine, and I hope you'll join me. Go to homestudiocorner.com/MT to download these tracks now, and I'll see you on the next video. Man, outro music, we're going to listen to this intro one more time because it is rocking my world.